Today we're discussing electric vehicles, plug-in electrics, and hybrids, and also our resident mechanic will answer any car-related questions in our Ask a Mechanic segment. Lemonade is brought to you by OMVIC, that's Ontario's vehicle sales regulator, and we're produced by the Automobile Protection Association. The APA fights for you, the consumer, and provides information and news on all parts of the industry. Visit our website at apa.ca or reach us by phone at 416-204-1444. Joining me today is John Raymond. He's an industry consultant and APA advisor, and Ron Groves. He's with Plug and Drive. We'll be taking your calls all evening at 888-764-3778. Hi, John. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you very much, Lorraine.
First time having you here. I appreciate you coming all the way out to Durham.
Well, I came in my electric car today, so it was a pleasure.
Our topic is electric cars and hybrids and PHEVs. Let's distinguish between the three off the top, just for viewers, because it's changing all the time. So EVs are electric vehicles, which are purely plug-in. PHEVs are plug-in electric vehicles, so they can, or plug-in hybrids. Okay, I've already screwed it up.
Gas and electric.
Gas and hybrids, which are gas and electric, but you don't have to plug them in.
But you don't have to plug them in.
Which is what I'm driving tonight, actually. I've got a Fusion out there that's
and yours plugs
hybrid.
Yeah, you've got a plug on yours. So you've got that's a Ford Fusion Energy, I believe, is what you're driving?
Yes.
And so it's what traditionally called a parallel hybrid. You've got a gas engine, electric motor beside it, and a big lithium-ion battery in the back. And you charge up the battery, you get about 40 kilometers of range just on the battery, but if you want.
And if I plug it in, I blow up my dishwasher because I'm not set up.
110's fine, just make sure it's a dedicated circuit.
Okay. We've got you here tonight, Plug and Drive. We're going to briefly tell us what it is, and then John's going to jump in with some questions for you.
Yeah, well, Plug and Drive has been around for about 5 years. It was started by our boss, Kara Clareman, and the goal, of course, was to harness the surplus energy that we have in our power grid here in Ontario. Those darn nukes, you can't turn them down. They just run flat out all the time. And so even before electric cars were available in Ontario, or in Canada for that matter, we were beginning to start the education process. So our role is public education. We bring the cars, the plug and the drive, out to the people. We do it at fairs and events. For example, this weekend we'll be at the Green Living Show. Downtown Toronto, Metro Toronto Convention Center. So you'll be able to come out, learn about electric cars, and then take one for a test drive. We hope that by dispelling myths and by giving people the opportunity to actually feel the difference when they drive an EV, that they'll be encouraged to go and buy one for themselves.
Go, John.
Ron, you sound like a disciple.
Well, that's what they pay me for, John.
Personally, I believe in electrics. I honestly believe that the industry will be going that way, but it will be a component. There will still be internal combustion engines for the immediate time. When I think of 2017, we're still 3 years, 4 years away before we start seeing most vehicle manufacturers having these cars. And if you look at the statistics from somebody like DeRosier that compiles all the statistics of car sales and who's buying what, the percentage of electric vehicles is so low. And PHEVs.
Still less than 1% of new car sales.
Yeah, so the market is extremely small. That's why education is important. And then you have to ask yourself as a public, the government's putting a lot of money into this, offsetting the costs for the people that are the early adopters. Is that fair?
That's the biggest question I get from readers and viewers. And DeRosier, same guy.
We know where he sits.
Yeah.
Oh, well, and plus, and I've known him for years and years and years. He says rebates and incentives mean the product is a failure, and he's very extreme, as you know. And he doesn't just say that; he says that about rebates on cars and stuff as well. But this $14,000 that's just gone up to in Ontario, I understand why people get their nose out of joint that they're paying that much to offset it. I also know we have to move the needle on electric sales. I agree with John, it is going that way. But I think when we start we like to compare to Norway and Holland and even Quebec, they have a lot cheaper electricity. And I think we have to be honest about that.
But we have to be cognizant that, that this is a good thing. It's how do we get there and who pays for it. And, my analogy is that, time marches on. So at the turn of the century, there was still carts and horses and farmers, like you said earlier, that didn't want to move on to tractors. But we also had actually electric vehicles at that time.
That's right.
And we had steam engine cars, and we had gas. So
and
we're
actually,
somewhere back to the future.
Ron, who's buying them now? Who's buying electrics right now?
So the early adopters, the demographic is older guys. Unfortunately, it seems to be a lot of guys. Technically sophisticated, they're engineers or techie type people. Well-educated, good income, single-family home to hang their charger on the wall, that kind of thing. Now, these aren't elites by any means. This is just general run-of-the-mill population people who embrace the technology and understand why it works.
Are we finally moving? It used to be that it had to be your second car. It couldn't be your primary car because of range anxiety and a lot of other issues. Are we moving past that point? Because a lot of people don't want two cars. If they're into environmental issues, they don't want two cars. Are we finally coming past that with the range?
Well, the common myth is that that a car that can go 200 kilometers isn't good enough for us. And so, the first 5 years of EVs, cars went 130 to 200 kilometers of range. And people say, well, my gas car can do 600 or 700 kilometers. But the reality is we don't drive 600 or 700 kilometers every day. 90% of our life is 60 kilometers or less. That's the StatsCan average. And so why would we buy a car that had all this capability when we hardly ever using it? And of course, the big pickup, of course, is when you buy the electric car and you drive it, the cost of ownership is extremely low, and so you can take that savings and plow it back against the cost of the purchase. And of course, the car only gets cleaner as you drive it. A gas car gets dirtier and dirtier as it gets older, and an electric car only gets cleaner and cleaner. And ultimately, that's why we're doing all this. Why are we moving to electric cars? You have to ask yourself that question.
I don't think it's a myth to say that people don't want them because of a low range. I think that's a fact. I don't think that's a myth. I'm not going to buy a car that I can go 100 kilometers on and get stuck. If I can't take it to my cottage.
It depends what your driving envelope is.
And your lifestyle.
I think if you live in an urban center, maybe that's a good choice.
It's fine, yeah.
If you live in the GTA and you travel all over the Golden Horseshoe, that makes it a little bit difficult until the infrastructure is there.
Yeah, we're used to gas cars. It's something we all grew up with. We looked over our father and mother's shoulder while they were driving, and we watched them gas up cars. So we really understand from an early age how the whole gas car thing works. We're used to that. 5 minutes, once a week, filling the tank, 600 kilometers of range. What you miss about an electric car, of course, is you can fuel it up at home. And you can always start every day with that 200 kilometers of range. So most of the time, you're going to have a car which suits most of your lifestyle. It performs just like any other car, will do the duty of any other car. For those long trips to the cottage, that was, in the early days, was an issue. Nobody wants to be, driving a 250K trip to the cottage with a car that only does 175 kilometers.
And my hydro bills at the cottage are brutal. Brutal.
Well, you're going to get a 25% break now on your hydro bill. Thank you to Premier Wynne, which is wonderful.
I've never heard anyone say that since I've been talking for the last 2 weeks, and nobody has said those words.
Well, you're going to get a 25% break on your hydro bill at the cottage and at home. And now if you own an EV, your transportation fuel bill just went down by 25% as well.
One of the things that we haven't mentioned, and fortunate to your organization, I've had a chance to drive a number of EVs when you have your open days, whether at Georgian College or elsewhere, is it's actually an interesting experience. Because it's like, in some ways, a large golf cart, right? So it's quiet, it's serene, yet powerful. Good acceleration. So those are the things that we really have to go out, if we believe in this technology, to tell the public that it's a nice experience.
Yeah.
There are many elements of this that it's, regardless of price, it's a different mode of transportation.
Absolutely. And of course, the dealership has always been about the test drive. People really want to try a car. And so the EVs are no different. They are a car. And it is a different driving experience. They're smooth, they're quiet, they're powerful. And of course, you can't tell a person that. We could stand here and talk about it all day long until you actually put them behind the wheel and they have that test drive. They have to see for themselves. And so that's what Plug and Drive does, is we take the cars out to the people and we let them drive those cars in a city environment or wherever we can find.
There's a little Quebec town, Rowden, that's been in the headlines the last couple of days because they've got the highest sales. They're letting people do test drives for a couple of days at a time. So like you said,
It's
they
the
can
GM
see them.
store in Rodin, Quebec.
They can adopt it and put it
Bourgeois.
into their lifestyle.
Yeah, that would be an awesome way to do it.
This is where I hit you and say be quiet. The Lemonade Car Show brought to you by OMVIC, Ontario's motor vehicle sales regulator, returns after this short break. When we come back, we'll be taking your calls 888-764-3778.